this computing. Yeah. So I think we discussed the background of memory analysis. So basically, how the computer memory works, and how the operating system's memory management operations makes it so messy, on the physical memory level, making it very difficult for a forensic investigator to directly analyze a memory image, right? So now you got an idea, I guess. So all these underlying details, like, reinforces the fact that it's not really possible for someone to manually analyze computer memory, right? You can't take a RAM image and then manually analyze it. Like, there are certain things you can do at very high level, but like searching for a keyword, like, you're searching for some particular keyword occurring somewhere, but other than that you cannot do much, right? um, so that opened up the window uh, to use tools, right? So we definitely need tools, properly developed tools that are capable of analyzing memory images, right? So that is how we got here, right? I think we went through some distance in this topic of volatility for memory analysis, right? So volatility is um, a memory forensics tool, right? So we discussed, I think we discussed these things, right? Like, there are different ways of acquiring memory, and you know that if it is a virtual machine, that is the best thing to perform memory forensics, because in a virtual machine, your memory, the memory of the virtual machine is basically can be saved, right? You can freeze the virtual machine, save its state, and that includes the state of the virtual machine includes its memory, right? So you can just save it to a file, and that's the best thing to do, right? For any other computers, I think we discussed. I'm just briefly refreshing this because it's been a while since we had a lecture. Um, if the computer is running, then we can do a lot, right? But if the computer is not running, still it is not the end of the road, right? As you know, if the computer has been hibernated, then it's hard disk, or this it's non-volatile storage, in somewhere have details about the memory content, because the computer, if it is hibernated, then that means it needs to restore the RAM content when it boots next time, when it is powered on next time, right? So hibernation file somewhere on the non-volatile storage will give us the content of the memory, right? And the page files, as you know, the swap space has processes swapped into from swap between RAM and the non-volatile storage. So even if the computer is shut down, you can still look at the non-volatile storages swap space, like, on a on a Linux computer, you have a dedicated partition called swap partition, right? So this is where these memory process address spaces are located, and you can retrieve these process address spaces from there, right? And then the crash dumps, like when a program crashes, its memory address space is dumped into a file, right? So even if a computer is shut down, if there's any process that has crashed while during its operations, when the computer was running, then there must be crash dump files somewhere in the non-volatile storage. You can retrieve them, right? And yeah, for running computers, there are two approaches we discuss. So one is the software approach, the other is hardware approach, right? If you have root access to the device, like, if you have the administrative privileges to the operating system, then you can install certain software tools and retrieve the thing. That's where we were going previously, right? And if it is hardware, then I mean, if you don't have the root privileges, then you have to use hardware. And there are different hardware interfaces that gives you direct memory access, right? DMI. Uh, a DMA, direct memory access, right, which you can use, for example, PCI interface, and FireWire, and such. There are various communication interfaces, expansion slots on a computer's motherboard, through which you can directly get access to the RAM, right? So by connecting certain the specialized hardware into any of these ports, you can directly read memory, right? And on the software side is the other thing that I think we discussed. Um, uh, yeah, okay. I just wanted to check where we are. Okay. Yeah. So on the software side, I think we discussed that there are various software tools available out there that you can use to take memory images, right? And like most of the times, these are tools that operates with the support of the operating system, right? Um, uh, uh, Yeah, memory extraction tools. So we discussed that there are tools such as WinPMM, Belkasoft RAM Capturer, AVML, Lime, etc. Different kinds of things for memory extraction, right? And all these things are available that you can download and try out. I'm not sure about Belkasoft software; it's a proprietary tool, but others are available in GitHub, right? And I put some special emphasis on the Linux side because I'm using Linux, but I mean, in a real world investigation, there's no guarantee that like what kind of computer you are going to deal with. Um, Most of the times, sorry, this yeah, these days it's raining all the time, and yeah, I got soaked in the rain today on my way home. So, okay, so yeah, in the case of okay, any of these tools, whenever you are using them, you need some sort of support from the operating system, and you need the uh, administrative privileges or the root privileges to a certain degree, right? In the case of Linux, you have AVML and Lime, and we specifically put our focus on Lime, if you can remember, which is a kernel module, right? And I mentioned to you that there are two other ways of reading memory on Linux platform. Basically, you go to like in the file system, you go to /dev/mem, and you can read it using any tool like cat command or anything. And we are supposed to read the physical memory content, right? Or you go to /dev/kmem, and you are basically reading the virtual memory, right? However, now as you know now um, modern Linux kernels don't really give you access to the memory through these /dev mem and /dev kmem files, right? Virtual files. They no longer, as virtual devices, they no longer give access because it's a security violation, right? I mean, it's a risk. Like you don't want anyone to simply go and read memory of other process address spaces, which will cause which will leak data, which will cause a lot of troubles, right? So now the only option right now seems to be using a kernel module such as Lime, right? And we talked about Lime. What you basically do is, let's say there's a computer and you want to take a memory image of this computer, a Linux computer. What you would do is you need to have root privileges on to this computer as well, first of all, right? So what you would do is on this computer you will install this kernel module called Lime Forensics DKMS, right? In a case of a Debian-based Linux distribution such as Debian, Ubuntu, etc. You have the apt repository, apt repository manager, so you can package manager. You can basically install Lime kernel module directly using apt, right? Once you install it, you can directly run it with root privileges. So we have this command called insmod, right? Which can be used to insert a kernel module into the kernel, right? So basically what Lime is an additional component plugin to the Linux kernel. Like, after you boot the computer, you have your monolithic kernel currently occupying memory, right? So, but if you want any additional features, any capabilities to the operating system, without restarting the computer, kernel modules is the only way, like one of the ways of doing this. So you basically load a kernel module, additional software component, which gets attached to the kernel, currently booted kernel, so that this kernel module has the same privileges, same power as the kernel of the Linux kernel. So it can do like access memory address spaces and read, right? So this insmod command with the sudo root privileges can be used to load the Lime kernel module. So the kernel module, once you install it with apt repository, apt package manager, this kernel module is located at /lib modules and the version of it, the generic, right? And then updates, dkms, and then finally you will see lime.ko, right? Kernel object, right? Uh, so insmod will basically load this kernel module, right? And once this kernel module is loaded, it will immediately run. As soon as it is loaded, it will immediately run. So if you want any parameters to be passed, arguments to be passed into the kernel, this kernel module, then you have to give them at the same time when you load that kernel module, right? So while you are running insmod command, specifying the exact kernel module you want to load, uh, directly in the same line within codes, you can specify the arguments that you are going to pass to the kernel module, right? So in this particular case, we are passing two arguments. One is path, right? And by path, what we are specifying is the location where the memory image should be saved. Like, the once the RAM image is captured, it should be saved somewhere, right? And that location is specified by this path argument, right? And I think it is obvious to you that this path cannot be some location in the non-volatile storage of the suspect computer or the device being investigated, right? Because you don't want to screw up the hard disk or the SSD drive of that computer, because it has to be analyzed anyway using file system forensic tools, right? So you don't want to save a big file like a memory image consisting of, I don't know, 8 GB or 16 GB or whatever the amount of RAM you have in that computer, right? It is going to occupy a similar amount on the storage media and unvolatile storage when you specify the path to whatever that location, right? So you don't want to save this to the suspect's computer itself. So this path has to be a path to some like external storage media that the investigator has connected to that computer, right? So path variable specifies where um, this particular memory image should be saved, right? And then the next argument format specifies the exact file format that this memory image should be saved in, right? There are different kinds of file formats supported by Lime kernel module. One of the formats is called Lime itself. So that's the file type Lime would save, right? And there are some few other file format types that you can look up, right? So you pass this arguments to insmod command along with the kernel module name. So this kernel module will be loaded to memory, and it will take these two arguments, right? And then immediately start running, right? So basically what happens is once you run this insmod command, usually on the terminal when you run it, it hangs there without really like, showing you any output, because, as soon as the insmod command was run, uh, kernel module jump into action, and it will start taking a memory image of that computer and save to this particular destination location, right, path. So it is going to take some time. For example, I don't know, I can't really recall how long it took on a computer with how much, 8 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, I can't really recall. On a computer about a year or two ago, when I ran it, it took like 10 minutes or some loss considerable time um, to completely take the memory image, right? And yeah, so because the bigger the memory like RAM you have on your computer, the longer it is going to take to capture and save that memory image, right? And don't forget that RAM is a highly dynamic, very volatile place, right? I mean, lots of things are changing in RAM while you are working on a computer, right? So in every second, every millisecond, something is changing in memory, right? Somewhere in the memory. So um, uh, Yeah, so the longer it takes to capture the memory image, the more inconsistent it is going to be, right? I hope that makes sense, right? Because memory is changing rapidly. So if you start taking the memory image from one corner of the memory and copying it byte by byte, while you are moving on copying, things that you have already copied are changing in the source RAM, right? And also things you are going to you are yet to copy is still changing, right, while you are moving on. So it's like the longer it takes to take the memory image, the less reliable that memory image is going to be. So the faster you can take it, the better, right? But unfortunately, it is going to take some time, depending on how big your RAM is, right, on that computer. Um, yeah, and then yeah, I think we discussed this as well the other day. Um, uh, once once you capture a memory image. mm, you can do some preliminary analysis on it without before you do any uh, serious analysis, right? So like without any having any advanced tools. So one thing you can basically do is, once you have a memory image, you can basically extract all the printable characters, strings, in this memory image, right? So uh, uh, so you can use the strings command, right? And pass the memory image to it. So basically what strings command does is, whenever any content, any file is given to strings command, it goes through that and extract all the strings, right? ASCII and Unicode strings that it can find, and dump it as output, right? So you can run the strings command with the memory image, and you can even pipe it to a grep, to so that you can search, like in the memory image you can search for a particular content, let's say you have a suspicion that on this particular computer a user has typed a particular key, word, right, or some phrase. So if the user typed it on this computer, then whatever the typed input text is going to be stored on RAM temporarily, right? And if you take a RAM image before that computer is shut down, then that whatever the typed in text should be must have been in memory and must have been captured to the memory image. So you can, with the strings command, you will extract that, right? I mean, once you run the strings command, you are going to see a lot of text, thousands of text strings coming out from the memory image, and then you can use grep to search and isolate whatever that string that you are looking for, right? So that is possible. But to do that, you need to know what you are looking for, right? You know a particular keyword, a password or a username, or any other special text content. That thing. All you want to know is whether this particular memory image contains that or not, right? You are basically searching for that. So you can use grep for that purpose, right? So it's not only the text that you need to um, search in the memory image. You can even search for binary data as well, non-printable data as well. For example, here you can see we can cat the memory image content, and you can grep with some additional parameters to search for hexadecimal text content. So you can see \x is standing for hexadecimal. So you can basically search for 61, 62. These are hexadecimal content, some certain bytes. So we are looking for 2 bytes. Like, just give me a few seconds. Okay. And yeah, so you can basically search for things that are not really text, right? So this is, in this particular case, we have a pair of hexadecimal characters, which is a byte, right? And this is another pair of hexadecimal characters, that means another byte. So you are basically searching for 2 bytes with a specific pattern, right? Bit pattern. You can still search for that kind of things as well. For example, imagine a scenario where you are like you know certain um, what kind of thing, certain code segment, like certain instructions that are part of a malware or a running program, right? You want to know whether this particular sequence of instructions exist in a particular memory image, and you can search for that particular binary pattern in the memory image to see whether it exists, right? Yeah, so these are the like typical. I mean, these are just straightforward things that you can do on with a memory image without really possessing any advanced memory analysis tools, right? So these are just strings command, cat command, grep command. These are small utility programs, right? These are not any dedicated. These are not dedicated advanced memory forensic tools, right? Okay. However, we need to do proper memory analysis, and that is why we need volatility, right? Um, uh, so, uh, so volatility is basically an advanced memory forensics framework, right? It's an open source tool, which is great actually. I mean, it's a rare thing to see this kind of tool, like in the open source world, but volatility exists. So it can analyze and extract artifacts from memory images, right? So remember that volatility cannot really take memory images, right? I mean, you have to acquire a memory image from a computer using other tools such as Lime kernel module and various other tools, right? But once you acquire a memory image, you can analyze that using volatility, right? Um, Volatility is written in Python actually. I think it has some components written in C probably somewhere internally inside it, but mostly it's a Python program, big Python program. Uh, so the advantage of it being Python is you can run it in many platforms, right? You can run it on Windows, Mac, Linux, and even it can run on different platforms, right? And it can analyze memory images from various platforms, right? Memory images taken from a Windows computer, a Mac, Mac OS, Linux, and even Android, right? Like mobile devices running Android can be used to take a memory image, and then you can use that memory image and analyze it on volatility, right? Um, so it's a really strong, comprehensive framework, right? Um, you extract the memory image from using other tools, but once you have the memory image, you can analyze it using volatility, right? Yeah, so you can go to github.com, and Volatility Foundation has like account where you're going to see volatility 3. Uh, yeah, there's something I think I'm not really sure I mentioned this previously, but um, volatility. Okay. Um, like nowadays we don't usually I don't know how about you, but at least for me now I'm slowly like replacing Google and DuckDuckGo and other web search engines with entirely with like AI tools, right? Whenever I want to search for something, I don't really search on the web like Google, then get the links and go to visit different websites to find the answer. Like just ask from any AI tool like ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever, right? Um, so when you are going to use volatility, you are going to face some trouble if you try to get help from any LLMs or AI tools, right? Uh, the reason is volatility had its previous version called volatility 2, right? So there was volatility 2, and now there's volatility 3. Unfortunately, volatility 3 is a complete revamp, a complete new implementation of volatility. So it is not really backward compatible with volatility 2. Yeah, so whenever you are running volatility, um, uh, like any syntax that you use with different arguments passed to volatility 2 are not really going to work for volatility 3. So volatility 3 has its own uh, uh, syntax, like format to run it, right? So that's really going to be a challenge, because um, whenever you look for resources online on how to do this and how to do that on volatility, um, at least if you just search on the web, then at least the websites you land on will tell you that, okay, this is how you do it on volatility 2, or this is how you do it things on volatility 3, right? But when you use AI tools, unfortunately, sometimes you get outputs like commands and how like syntaxes mixing up volatility 2 and 3, right? Unfortunately. So that makes, like, for example, if you get some like syntax that a specific command that you can run on volatility 3, and I mean, if you want to run something on volatility 3, but uh, if uh, if AI tool gives you, or in the web search, if you land on some um, syntax examples that are written for volatility 2, they're not really going to work on volatility 3, right? So sometimes, like, I learned it in the hard way. Like, sometimes while I was working, like doing certain things on volatility, things doesn't work, and I tried to debug, and didn't work, and it took some time to figure out that actually the mistake is syntax is correct, but it is for volatility 2, not for 3, right? All right. So how do you use volatility? You can like clone the repository in GitHub, right? And you go into volatility 3, and there are certain requirement libraries that you need. You can install them with pip3, right? This requirements.txt file contains all the required packages, Python packages. They will be installed. So once you have it, you can run it, right? So volatility is basically a command, like a program called vol.py. It's a Python program, right? You can run it with Python 3. So you can run Python 3, vol.py, and -h. It will list down all the helpful, like helps, right? Plugin, a list of plugins and how they run, etc. Right? You can search things. Um, um, so in volatility, what you are going to basically do whenever you are using volatility is going to be something like this in this last line, right? So there's volatility 3, like a Python 3, and you give the volatility vol.py program name, right? Which is volatility, right? And then two things, right? One is -f, and you had to give the memory image file name, right? -f and memory image, right? And then whatever the volatility plugin you want to run, right? Volatility plugin. By plugin, what I mean is volatility has lots of like modularized capabilities, different kinds of components, plugins that can do different things, right? So whenever you are running volatility, what you basically have to do is you have to give the memory image, right? And you have to name the plugin you want to run, right? So volatility will load that plugin. That plugin will do the analysis, so extraction of whatever the data information from that memory image file, right? So this is the general syntax. There are various other things you can do, but this is one general syntax that we often can use, right? So this is yeah, some examples of things that you can do on using volatility with memory images, right? So the nice thing is you don't really have to acquire a memory image from your own computer in order to try out volatility by analyzing that memory image, right? You can find a lot of pre-made pre created memory images out there. For example, you can find example memory images to be analyzed with volatility. You can find them online, various from various sources. Um, so in this particular case, this particular memory image is something I also taken, because this is a Windows a memory image from a Windows computer. So I don't have a Windows computer, so Uh, so this memory image is coming from like I downloaded from a shared place. Um, so this is the syntax, as you can see, right? Python 3 world.py, right? And then two parameters. One is file name minus f, the memory image file that you want to analyze. So this is memory images XP laptop 2005 625, right? This is the memory image. So it's a very old computer, like the memory image itself is 20 years old, right? Um, from a Windows XP computer, apparently from the file name, right? So you specify the file name of the memory image, right? And then as your next parameter, you specify the plugin name, right? You have to specify the name of the plugin. And there are different kinds of plugins out there that you can use to um, analyze this memory image, right? So how do you list the plugin names? You can use this, right? Python 3 vol.py minus h will list you all the available plugins, right? So you specify this specific plugin that you want, and it will extract the data that it has been designed to extract, right? For example, this particular plugin is called windows.info, right? So this particular plugin can extract the details of the Windows operating system, which is running, which has been running when this memory image was acquired, right? Um, Similarly, there are various other plugins. So in the second bullet point, you can see this it's same memory image, but the plugin has changed. It's windows.pslist. Pslist basically on a Windows computer. This plugin can list down all the processes, like process list that has been running on this particular computer's memory when this memory image was acquired, right? Process list, right? And then there's pscan, so you can search for a particular processes by specifying this plugin, right? And you can see the hierarchy of the processes as well. Windows.ps3, so you will see the hierarchy of the processes, which process is a child process of which process, or which process is a parent process of the other process. So or this hierarchy can be seen, right? And then there are various other plugins like netscan. You can scan the ports of a computer. uh, you can like netstat, you can view the details of the network interfaces, blah blah. All these plugins are designed to do one specific thing. So you basically run the volatility along with a particular plugin, so that that plugin will do its analysis and produce an output which you can save to your computer, right? uh, in this last example, we run Python 3 with volatility.py and specify the same memory image file name. And now we have specified several additional parameters uh, for this plugin. One is slash home asanka download. That's a path, right? And then the plugin name is windows.mmap, right? Mmap, and we specify minus minus PID 4, right? So what we basically specify is this Windows mmap plugin can go and find a particular process that has been running on this computer when the memory image was being taken, right? So Windows mmap function plugin can go into this memory image file, search for a process with the process ID 4, right? And extract it, right? So you can save it into this location, right? Slash home asanka downloads. In that location, you can like this extracted memory process address space can be saved, right? So basically, volatility can do a lot of things, but you need to use the right plugin for that purpose, right? If you use the right plugin, uh, it can help you to extract the um, uh, whatever the data that plugin has been designed to extract, right? Um, all right, so that's very briefly about memory forensics and specifically volatility. Um, I think. Yeah, we can go like further down in this avenue on memory forensics. It's a broad topic again. There are various techniques, tools that to know about, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong while you are trying to take a memory image. I mean, I think it's obvious that memory acquisition is a very risky business, right? While you are trying to acquire the memory of a computer, you can make things worse, right? Like the computer can crash basically, like the OS will have to be restarted, or like, like individual, like, data, the specific processes can get contaminated with whatever getting installed, right? Now, a lot of things can go wrong. So, yeah, memory analysis, memory forensics is a tough thing to do, right? So usually um, it's done on case scenarios where it is really necessary to do so, right? Unless it is really necessary to take a memory image, better not to even attempt at taking it, right? In many case investigations in real life, the investigators don't really get an opportunity to take a memory image, because by the time they get the device to their forensic laboratory, the device has been already turned off, so there's no opportunity to take the memory image. Yeah, so it's a rare case, right? All right, so that's the end of our memory forensics discussion. This topic, like, there are plenty of other things that we could have discussed, but I kept it like short in this topic. Any questions on this before we move on to the next topic, our last topic in the digital forensics lecture series? Any questions? Any doubts? Seems no. Um, okay, so with that, then I will move on to our next topic, right? That is malware forensics, right? That is our last topic. Well, um, yeah. So this is a little bit debatable topic, basically. Like um, some people in digital forensics domain don't really agree with that. Malware forensics is forensics, right? So some people think that malware analysis is basically security, right? It's not a part of forensics. That's what some digital forensics people in digital forensics domain argue. So it's uh, in some, like, some courses in the world and in some textbooks, sometimes malware forensics is omitted, right? Citing that it is security, not forensics. It's the job of the security people, computer security people, to take care of analyzing malware and etc., right? But anyway, in my personal view, I prefer to consider malware analysis as a part of digital forensics domain. That's why I picked this topic as malware forensics, because malware can be used as a weapon to do things, bad things, right? I mean, malware does not appear like, like just out of thin air, right? I mean, like someone develop a malware and for a purpose, right? Sometimes just for fun to develop a malware, but in some cases, malware are developed specifically aiming at specific target systems, right? People develop malware to attack like such systems. If you can, like, I think you know better on this thing, like, in the Master of Cybersecurity program, I think, like, there must have been, like, other courses where you came across, malware, and there are malicious, harmful things, right? So it's generally a part of security, but whenever someone develops a malware, they have some criminal mind. I mean, like, they have some criminal objective, right? I mean, they develop it to do something harmful, and once the malware is deployed and it goes and do harmful things, and as law enforcement sometimes, or as forensic community, sometimes we have to identify how something happened on a computer, whether a human did it, whether a specific software bug did it, or maybe a particular malicious software did something, right? Not without any human intervention, right? These are possibilities, right? So as a forensic investigator, we want to know whether a particular program is a malware or not, or what a particular program is doing, right? We need to know whether it's doing good things or malicious things, right? So it's part of forensics as well. I mean, studying malware, analyzing how they work, where they were developed, and or for what objective. All these things are part of forensics, right? So that is why we have malware forensics. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's dive into this thing. Um, uh, yeah. So we'll move a little ahead, and then we'll probably take a short break. So there are different types of malware out there, right? Uh, there are ransomware, there are spyware, adware, Trojan horses, worms, viruses, rootkits, keyloggers, botnets, right? All these things are software that are developed for malicious objectives, right? So there are ransomware which are installed on computers, and most of the times they basically encrypt the content of that computer and demand a ransom payment to whoever the developers or operators of that malware, right? Then only they will unlock or decrypt the content of a particular computer, right? So ransomware. And then there are spyware, like software that are installed on our computers and mobile devices. They don't really do anything harmful directly on our device, but they are basically capturing, monitoring our activities, right, to a certain degree, right? And then adware, like basically applications that are showing us advertisements and gaining our attention, and which will help the malware developer, this adware developer, to earn money in certain ways, right? And in the modern day, it's funny that a lot of adware are basically operating like spyware, isn't it? I mean, for example, there are lots of whenever you are using certain tools, or browsing web or in your online activities, um, a lot of scripts that has been loaded into your device are now like basically monitoring what you are doing, like where you click and what kind of contents you look at for too long or whatever, right? And then so all these things indicate that you have certain interest on certain things, and then that can be used to show you advertisements on such things, right? And then whoever operating these networks can earn money, like gain money by showing ads to you, right? So because of that, modern adware want to know our behavior, what we are doing, what kind of things we are interested in, etc. So similar to a spyware, right? Adware is basically monitoring us, right? And then there are Trojan horses, like software that comes in as like innocent, benign software pieces, and then once the opportunity arrives, then this malware does the malicious thing, right? And there are worms and viruses, right? Worms are basically like viruses. The only difference is they are spreading rapidly through the network, right? Through the internet, right? So they are basically self-replicating malicious software, right? And then there are rootkits, right? Specific tools that can be used to exploit the privilege restrictions on computers and mobile devices, right? And like escalate the privileges of a particular user, right? So for example, on my computer, let's say I have root access, no other user have root access, but there can be other user accounts, right? So using rootkits, you can you can a normal user can elevate their privilege level to a like administrative or root level privileges, right? Or in the case of mobile devices like Android and iOS, etc., rootkits can be used to root the device, or you basically break the privileges restrictions, right? So that you on this particular device that has been rooted, then you can do anything you want. Like you can install certain software that cannot be installed on it without being rooted. So lots of things can be done. So rootkits are specific tools that can be used to escalate the privileges of a software system, right? And then keyloggers are there. They are basically a kind of spyware, of course, but specifically keyloggers are capturing like our keyboard inputs, right? What kind of contents we are entering, right? And then we have bots and the botnets, right? So individual bots are individually small software pieces that are getting installed or running on like victim computers, bots, right? And a bot network or botnet is basically a large collection of such bots, right, working together for a specific like special requirement, right? Like collection of uh, uh, um, yeah. Um, yeah, so specifically a collection of bots that are working together to achieve a common objective that's probably developed by the same people, operated by the same people, but a collection of them doing some common stuff, right? Um, yeah. So malware end up in forensic investigations um, um, due to various reasons, right? You get a computer that has, you are investigating a computer system that has been hacked into, and something bad has happened on this computer, and the attackers may have used malware to like gain access to this computer, right? So as a forensic investigator, you need to check its content and I mean analyze this computer to identify that a malware has been used, and then if a malware has been used, who installed it, how this malware got in here, and all this information, who developed it, all these things are relevant and important, right? uh, yeah, okay. And then uh, uh, yeah, okay. So that's what we are interested in, right? Um, yeah, so malware has various purposes, right? So in a network in a investigation, forensic investigation, where we are dealing with something a malware may have done, we can we have several objectives to conduct a malware forensics, right? One thing can be like we want to study a malware in order to help developing antivirus systems or intrusion detection system signatures, right? So there's a malware, and we want to prevent further events from it, or we want to prevent further um, things that can happen on like this malware can do. So to do that, you have to first of all study the malware. You have to identify what its behavior is, and then only you will know how to stop it, right? And then or how to detect it at least, and then you can use this information in order to develop antivirus software, or like the intrusion detection systems in order to catch this malware, right? So uh, so that can be one potential reason. This is where the security side is, right? I mean, computer security community are studying malware in order for this particular purpose, right? Antivirus software development and intrusion detection system signature development, etc. Right? But as a forensic investigator, we may have the same requirement, right? And then a part of malware forensics can be just detecting a compromised system, right? In a a particular individual computer or some computers in a network, right? And we want to know whether they are compromised by any way. So by performing malware forensics, if detecting the presence of certain malware can help us to yeah, basically know that a particular system has been compromised already, right? Another possibility can be containing an infection. Let's say a malware has infected a particular computer. Now, it's it can spread to other computers and do more harmful things. So, as and one objective for malware forensics can be to study this malware so that you learn how to prevent further spreading of this malware, right? So that can be a potential goal, right? Um, and something much more interesting can be tracking down the source of the malware. Like we want to know from where this malware came, like who installed it or like who developed it. Like so those the finding the roots of a particular malware can be like important. Right? That can be a thing that we would do on malware forensics, right? And of course, finally, gathering evidence for courts, right? In any of these, like if it is a part of a legal investigation, we need to do malware forensics in order to, like with significant confidence, report that, something has happened and or done by a malware, right? Um, Okay, shall we take a few minutes just to drink water and then a little bit of water and then we can resume like maybe 5 minutes, like uh, 5 minutes past 8. Shall we resume to continue? Okay. Um, yeah. So. So malware are not going to be just sit in broad daylight so that we can easily locate them and identify them, right? So they are going to use various kinds of tactics to avoid detection, right? So as a part of forensic analysis, whenever we are looking for malware, presence of malware on a particular computer or in a particular system, we need to be aware of things that a malware would use in order to avoid detection, right? So what kind of tactics will they use, right? There's encryption and obfuscation that they can use, right? Basically, they can encrypt parts of their content, or sometimes they can obfuscate it, like instead of having the data or their code in a certain way, they can obfuscate it with various unnecessary content, so that it's very hard to see that a particular sequence of instructions are doing something harmful, right? So both of these techniques can hide the content, right? Make it difficult to detect, right? And there are lots of malware that especially bots, right? That uses some remote distributed command and control systems, right? So if you have just a single central point from which you are going to get commands for this bot network to operate, that is I mean that will uh, that can be easily detected, right? If you monitor the network, you can see that all the bots installed in our devices are keeping communication, keeping in touch with a particular remote host. You can see packets going to that particular host and going and coming, and that indicates that something in that particular destination host seems to be staying in touch with some certain things on running on our computers, right? So that can give away that there is a malware which is being controlled by a command and control center. There are bots, right? But that can be prevented by having a distributed CNC, right? Distributed command and control systems where the bots are not all bots are directly communicating and keeping in touch with like a particular single command and control center, right? So the center will be distributed across. So there will be pieces of it in various hosts, right, on over the internet. So so it's not easy to detect, right? That our bots like malware or running on certain computer systems are staying in touch with the common command and control center, right? And self updates, right? I mean, the malware can automatically update itself with newer contents, newer capabilities, right? So things change quickly, right? And the network behavior. If you keep an eye on the network, the network oriented malware can, the network behavior will give away the presence of a malware, right? On a particular computer system. But the malware can try to avoid that by having a network access and network behavior in a very irregular manner, right? So that it's not easy to see that something suspicious is going on in a particular network, right? In a computer system, right? Uh, Yeah, so that is the thing, right? And then encryption can be used in communication as well, right? I mean, command and control channel with the remote host can be encrypted so that you cannot really see what's going between them, right? And also the you can encrypt the malware contents, like payload of the malware, so that antivirus software or the intrusion detection system software cannot really recognize the signature pattern of a particular malware because the content is encrypted, so it's no longer like readable, right? I mean, yeah. So yeah, so investigations on malware or malware forensics can be done on various stages in different fronts, right? Multiple fronts, right? So these different fronts belongs to different subdomains of digital forensics, right? They belong to different subdomains, right? Um, for example, one thing can be observing the network behavior. If some malware has been installed in on a particular computer or some system, many computer systems, right? Um, 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 then um, uh, so then by monitoring the network behavior, right? By looking at what's really going on in the network, we like it will give away some clues about the presence of a particular malware in our systems, right? So the way to do that will be a part of network forensics, right? As a part of network forensics, you are looking at the live network packets going through the network. You are looking at logs, network logs on the on uh, the network connected devices, right? And they will give away, they will provide some clues about the presence of a particular malware, right? So this is basically a part of network forensics, right? The network forensic investigators will take care of that side, right? Partly, right? Of course, it's malware forensics. You are looking for malware, but presence of a malware, but basically um, yeah. So it's basically network forensics, right? And then inspecting executable code, right? Like you are looking for executable malicious code, malicious programs that has been installed on a particular computer system, right? So in that case, it's partly file system forensics, isn't it? I mean, you are basically um, um, you're basically looking at files installed on the file system, right? Installed in the file system, looking for specific executable files. So it's basically partly it's file system forensics, not entirely, but it's part of file system forensics because you are searching for and extracting programs that are executable programs, right? Files that are executable files. So that's file system forensics. Um, and then memory behavior, right? There are certain malware out there that are like that are memory based. That means these malware stay in memory and do all the activities on memory, not, without sometimes not really getting installed on the non-volatile storage, right? Um, and uh, um, uh, so so the only way to detect them or only way to recognize their presence is to see how a particular program is behaving and doing things on the memory, how it allocates like memory address space. I mean, how what kind of things it does in the memory, what kind of areas it is accessing, what kind of things it's reading, uh, etc. Right? So that is part of memory forensics, right? That the topic we just finished discussing, right? I mean, taking a memory image of a computer and looking through the spaces of processes on in it, and like extracting certain process address spaces, inspecting their content, etc. That's part of memory forensics, right? So as a part of malware forensics, we'll have to look at the memory contents and how the memory is being utilized by certain executable programs, right? All right. So these are different like fronts to tackle malware, right? As a part of digital forensics. right? Let's focus on network behavior for a moment, right? Um, Uh, so whenever there are any malware installed on a computer or malware operating in a particular system, that are very network oriented. That means they use network like excessively. Then it should be detectable by looking at the network behavior, right? Kinds of packets going between computers, what kind of destination IP addresses they like these packets are going to, and specific kinds of payload they are having. Like these things may give clues about the presence of a malware on a computer system, like just by looking at the network behavior, right? There are different aspects in the network behavior we can look at, right? So one thing is propagation, right? I mean, how the malware is traveling from one place to another place, like how the malware is going to spread, right? That it can use network, right? So by looking at the network behavior, we might be able to detect the spreading of the propagation of malware, right? But once a malware is installed, um, like the installed malware may be keeping constant communication with some command and control center in a remote host, right? From which it is getting commands to do things, right? If the malware is installed, then from the network activities, we may be able to notice. Um, we may be able to notice. Uh, um, uh, the communications between the malware and that remote command and control center, right? So that is something noticeable probably, right? And then finally payload, right? The actual malware is doing something harmful, and whatever the payload it has received when it is going through the network, we should be able to detect that as well, right? So all these are network behavior, right? So how does a malware propagates? Well, it may go as an attachment in an email, right? Or it may be like, a link, a web link, or like a link on a PDF file or any content that the user clicks on, and they get directed to that whatever that source of that content, right? Uh, so all these things can happen from the user's end, or there can be direct network-based exploitations. That means like an attacker or the attacking device, like from remotely, can directly access the victim device and insert code, right? For example, after a port scan, like let's say the attacker do a port scan, identify like a vulnerable interface on the computer through which the attacker can get logged into the device, or like just insert like install malware, or like insert code into memory, whatever, right? That kind of things. It's a direct network based exploitation, right? All these things can be used to propagate a malware, right? Yeah, so how do we prevent them? Well, like like in the case of emails, etc., web links, etc., then like we have to prevent social engineering. Like the users need to be made aware of bad things that can happen if they click on links, and if they like download attachments from untrusted sources, etc., right? But from the network side, by looking at sniffing the network traffic and trying to like to look searching for the presence of signatures of specific malware in TCP streams can be used, right? For example, whenever an attachment with some malware content is going, or like a user clicks on a web link, and which downloads some malicious code and all these things, this payload, like malicious content, it has a signature pattern, and if we can keep an eye on the TCP streams and monitor what's going between, and we may be able to like detect the presence of that. But that can only be done with live network forensic analysis. Like we have to like capture packets in live and keep an eye on. I mean, we have to. Uh, we have to monitor the traffic going through the network live, right, for that purpose. Um, and then the command and control center communication, right? So this command and control channels allows a remote attacker to issue commands to malware running on victim computers and manage their behavior, etc. Right? They can update their code, whatever. Like lots of things can be done from the command and control center, right? So, interestingly, this command and control center, the communication with the command and control center. Um, can be maintained through various channels. Like there are various kinds of crazy channels that can be used to keep this communication. Right, one thing can be HTTP basically. Right, I mean. Uh, the malware can send a HTTP GET post request to a remote server, web server, and that web server, as a response to this HTTP request, can respond with whatever the malicious commands, right? Operated by the malware operator, right? So HTTP, like directly on web traffic, right? And sometimes it can be social networking sites, for example, let's say Twitter or X, right? Where, a tweet can be a particular, um, uh, they no longer use the term tweet, right? I mean, after Elon Musk acquired Twitter, they changed the name to X, and so it's no longer Twitter, and there's no longer the term tweeting something, right? So it's basically posting, I guess, right, in X. Um, Anyway, so let's say in Twitter, the good old Twitter, the command and control center can be basically an account in Twitter where they can post a tweet, right? And when you post a tweet, um, uh, the bots, the malware installed on different computers can be subscribed to this Twitter account, and whenever a tweet is posted by that account, the malware can just take the content from that tweet, which is basically some command for the bots, right? That kind of things are possible, right? Sometimes it can be just peer to peer, like just peer to peer communication, where individual bots and the command and control channel server has direct like peer-to-peer TCP sockets or UDP socket connections, right? Uh, and sometime back we no longer use this, but sometime back we had this uh, internet relay chat IRC protocol, right, which can be used to do chatting across the internet. Um, uh, no, I think nobody no longer use it, but this IRC protocol channels can be used as a command and control channel, right? So all these things can be detected by network behavior, right? Now, if we have a way to keep an eye on the network on like live network forensic inspection, we may be able to detect the malware specific traffic going through the network, right? Um, so the clues can be, I don't know, like maybe the volume, like the unusual amount of packets going with certain hosts, like that can arouse suspicion, right? Sometimes it can be the directionality, like where the packets are really going or where the packets are really coming, like this specific IP like addresses that are untrusted or like suspicious, right? Um, um, and sometimes the timing of flow patterns, like there can be some malware. For example, think about a crypto mining malware, right? Which gets installed in our servers, right? Let's say there's some organization has their own servers in their in their website and various other infrastructure, and let's say some malware got installed in these servers, which can do crypto like the currency mining, and maybe this. Give me a second. I have caught a very bad cold now. Okay. Um, yeah, so the flow pattern. What I was telling you was, so we may have some web server and other like databases, etc., some infrastructure, right? And if some, let's say, cryptocurrency mining malware is installed on our devices, so they don't want this malware doesn't want to do mining all the time, right? I mean, it doesn't want to do mining all the time. It it's uh, like because like the users or the admin of the servers may notice that, right? So like whenever something unusual is running on the server, so these malware can be programmed to operate at a certain time. So for example, maybe like this malware starts functioning from midnight up to I don't know 5 a.m. let's say, right? So just 5 hours in the middle of the night. So when nobody's really using these systems, the admin is not like not logged in and actively monitoring the stuff, right? So that can be a good time to do some malicious activities, right? So as a part of the malware's operations during that particular time, there will be specific network traffic going between your server infrastructure with some remote hosts, right? So so this timing specifically, like if you keep an eye on the log files about the traffic flows, then it may be noticeable that okay, at a certain time period of in the day, or maybe at the night time, where the traffic like there's a surge of network traffic, or like there's some unusual kind of traffic going between certain remote host and our computers, right? So these things can give clues about uh, like malicious like command and control center communications, right, in the network behavior. And finally, the payload, right? The payload of a malware, it is completely depending on, I mean, like, what kind of thing the malware is programmed to do, right? Like, different malware are programmed to do different things. There can be malware that is like a bot, basically, that is designed to participate in denial of service attacks, right? So basically sending a lot of traffic through the network, right? And there can be malware that are, the job is to just spam like particular device or interface, right? And then hosting pirated software, right? So there can be malware that can be used to like store, like like install and run pirated software on the computer systems, right? And reconnaissance, right? I mean, scanning like ports and monitoring like users behavior, etc., right? That can be an objective, right? And information theft, basically, like stealing whatever important data on a particular device, right? And key logging, like user keyboard inputs. So there will be different malicious purposes, right? And depending on the purpose of the malware, like they will do specific kinds of network activities. So by monitoring the network, for these specific kind of activities can reveal the presence of a malware as well, right? So that which can be which is important for malware forensics, right? We need to know whether a particular computer system has been infected with the malware. That's what the forensic investigator is first of all interested in, right? So from a network forensic point of view, they can find the answer to that to a certain degree, right? All right, so we are reaching the last segment of this topic, right? Um, so forgetting about the network, now let's dive into the specific malware code. Like a malware is basically a executable program, executable file that is installed on a computer that which is running and uh, like doing harmful things, right? The issue is on a computer system, there are various executable programs, right? There are legitimate software that we have installed that we want to run. There's the operating system, these utility programs, right? Lots of executable code, right? So if we have a malware installed on a particular computer, that will be just another executable program, executable file, right? So how do we really distinguish um, a malware from other executable programs, right? How do we know that a particular program is a malicious program? A particular program is doing harmful things on a computer, right? That's something we want to know about, right? Um, So how do we do that? So there's no way to just look at the program and say, oh, this looks like a malware, right? You can't, right? In the case of like, an executable program, um, the only way to know whether it's doing something malicious, uh, that it is a malicious program, is to look at its code and decide, what exactly it is doing, right? And what kind of harmful thing it is doing, right? We have to look at the code, right? However, most of these, like, not most, I mean, almost, I mean, all these malware are actually compiled programs, right? They are the compiled machine code collection or sequence of machine code instructions, right? So you can't really look at it and understand what they are doing, right? Unless you are really, like, good at reading machine code, which is highly unlikely, right? So what can we do? How can we try to understand what a malware is actually doing as a part of, okay, think about this. For example, uh, your file system forensic investigator, like the file system forensic expert in your team, recovered some executable files from the hard disk, right? And giving it to you because you are the malware forensics guy, right? So the file system forensics guy recovered some files and giving to you, saying that, okay, I found these particular executable programs, like suspicious programs. I don't know what they are, and check, right? And now you won't know whether these particular executable programs are malware or not. Are they doing anything harmful or not? But these are compiled programs, executable like machine code instructions. So you can't really read and understand it, right? So what options are available to you, right? What kind of thing can you do to inspect the malicious like executable code on a particular program to know whether it's malware or not, right? Um, and this is where software reverse engineering comes to the stage, right? Software reverse engineering is basically starting with executable code, machine codes, right? And reversing it back to high level program code or anything that a human can read and understand, so that you can understand the behavior of it, right? That's the goal. Um, so if there's a executable program, executable file, you can reverse engineer it and get the high level code back, and then the high level code can be read, right? You can read and understand the high level code of a program, and then see if there's any suspicious activities this program is doing, right? That is a possibility, right? So that's where we can go. So software reverse engineering can be done using tools, right? There are reverse engineering tools out there. So you don't really need a forensic, like dedicated forensic tool to do this. Any kind of software reverse engineering tool out there uh, can be used for this purpose, right? You have some suspicious set of executable files, and you want to reverse engineer them and get their high level code and see what kind of things these programs are doing, right? So for that, you can use different reverse engineering software. So when you are doing software reverse engineering, actually, there are different stages of doing things, right? For example, okay, think about the other way around. Like, you are writing a program, so you write it in the high level programming language, right? And then you compile it to generate the machine code, like the executable code. So you compile it. This is a long process, actually. I mean, compilation process has multiple stages. Basically, you can there's a parser, and then there's a linker, parser, then compiler, and then you link it. Lots of things happen. Finally, to get a executable file, right, program, right? But basically, in short, you basically compile a high level code to machine code, right? So when you reverse it and try to get the code back, original code back to the which is to human readable, there are two potential things that you can do. One would be decompilation. Decompilation is basically getting the high level program language code back directly, right? And there's another intermediate thing, that is disassembly. Like, you have machine code, you can convert it, you can disassemble it and get the assembly language code back. As you know, the assembly code and the machine code has a very close relationship, right? I mean, usually assembly, assembly is basically most of the times a one-to-one replacement for specific machine codes, right? There's machine code instructions, and every machine code instruction with adding numbers, moving numbers, or whatever, right? From memory to a register, and adding two values into registers and storing the value result in another register. All these things will be in machine code ones and zeros, right? And there is a corresponding assembly instruction for each of them, right? For adding numbers, for adding instruction, there's a corresponding assembly instruction, right? Human readable assembly instruction. So if you do disassembly, you get the assembly code back, right? If you do the decompilation, you get the high level, high level language code back, right? But there's a little tricky thing here. If from machine code to assembly language is fine, you can disassemble and you get the assembly code back, right? But getting high level language is bit tricky. Okay, my battery is slow. Just give me a second. I will connect the. All right. Um, yeah. So there's a little thing to note here. I mean, somebody will write a program in a particular language. Someone can write in C, someone can write in C++, and various other languages, right? And then once you compile it, you get the machine code, right? But when you decompile it, we don't really know what the original language, what was the original high level language used for this, right? And we don't really know. So so in decompilation, usually what happens is we convert the machine code, machine code in the executable program, back to into some common high level language, like for example C. Let's say like something common is C language, right? The original program may have been written in some other language, in other high level language, but uh, we don't really know what it is. Whenever we have an executable program, uh, with the software reverse engineering tool, you can reverse it back to C, right? So that's one possibility, right? But C is readable, human readable, so you can read and understand what the code is doing, right? So this is the process, right? You can either disassemble and get the assembly code, or you can decompile and get the high level language code, right? Um, Yeah, so what is the file format? Like the machine code data are stored in a particular file format, right? Whenever you find an executable file, for example, your file system forensic investigator will recover certain files, executable files from the hard disk or the SSD drive and pass them to you, right? So these executable files are in different file formats. There are different executable file formats out there. um, for Linux, Unix-like platforms like Linux, etc., BSD, uh, they are using this file format called ELF file format, executable and linkable format. That is a specific file format which can be used to create executable files. Right? Uh, so the structure, general structure of an ELF file is like this, right? Where you have the ELF header, you have some program header tables. There's .text area where you have the executable code, right? And then you have the .raw data where the data to a certain degree, uh, and then you have the stack. So you have the stack and the heap, right? And various other things within the executable ELF file format, and some additional headers as well. So uh, we are not going to study the file format, but generally ELF file format has some very fixed, very detailed structure, right? Um, so whenever you have a executable file stored on the computer in the hard disk or SSD drive, let's say it's in ELF file format, and whenever you want to run this program, this has to be loaded to RAM, right, non-volatile storage, by the time it is being loaded, like different things like the tools like linker and loader will extract various parts from the ELF file and then place them in the right way in the memory in the process address space so that it can actually run, right? So that happens dynamically. But in the non-volatile storage, it will be a file with fixed content in the ELF file format, right? Um, there are various utility programs that you can use to read an ELF file. For example, there's this utility program on Linux called GNU Linux called read ELF, right? So if you see a executable program file, right, .elf file, you can pass that to read DLF command utility program, and it can read through this all these internal headers etc of the ELF file and print out like show us a lot of details about this ELF file. Like that is useful, like even from forensic point of view it is useful. You can use read ELF command to extract information from an ELF file, and that will give you some idea about a particular executable file, right? Even before reverse engineering and getting the high level code back, like reading an ELF file using a proper utility like this and getting some idea about it is useful. And then reverse engineering tools can be used to reverse engineer the content of the ELF file and get the high level program back, like the version of the program before the compilation, right, can be taken back using a reverse engineering tool. Like many software reverse engineering tools supports ELF file format. It is a very common file format, so it's supported, right? You can either disassemble or you can decompile it completely, right? From an ELF file back to whatever the high level language or the assembly code, right? So what kind of tools are out there to do this software reverse engineering? There are many tools actually. Like a lot of you must have used software reverse engineering tools for various purposes, right? But let me quickly introduce you to, like, as the last thing, let me quickly introduce you to a specific software reverse engineering tool, right? Software tool. This is a special tool. That's why I want to just specifically mention it, right? So this tool is called Gidra, right? It's Gidra, uh, the software reverse engineering tool, and it was developed by NSA, right? National Security Agency in the US government, right? So they have this research directorate. So they develop tools for their spies and their like investigators, detectives, etc. So this Kidra is a software reverse engineering tool developed by NSA for their agents, right? Um, yeah, so initially it was closed source. I mean, like nobody knew that such a tool exists, right? However, WikiLeaks, right? WikiLeaks is like a collection of whistleblowers who leaked lots of government data, like specific most of the times from US government, not always US, right? Sometimes from other countries, other governments as well. So WikiLeaks guys just publicize, put confidential documents and materials, etc., that belongs to governments to the public domain, right? That's what they did, right? So WikiLeaks, at some point, I can't really recall which year, they made a leak. They called it Vault 7, right? You can find it in I'm not really sure whether the website works now, but in their website they had a series of leaks called Vault 7, right? So in this series of leaks, inside that they mentioned Hydra, and they I think they even leaked the code of Hydra as well, I believe, as a part of this leak. So that is how the world got to know that there's a tool called Gidra exists, right? A software reverse engineering tool developed by National Security Agency for their own detectives and agents, etc. Right? But after this WikiLeaks revelation, uh, Later on at some point, I don't know, it is because of WikiLeaks action or because NSA at some point decided that it's better to put this in public domain. Somehow the NSA declassified this tool Ghidra, and right, and then they made it, they turned it into an open source project, right? They made it an open source project. Now Ghidra is an open source project. Source code is out there, and then it's open, so like anyone can download and use it, right? So Ghidra can decompile an executable file such as an ELF file, right, and give you the high-level code back, right? Uh, and you can debug executable programs and do various things with Ghidra, right? Right. So Ghidra is written in Java basically. So you need to have Java installed on your computer. I didn't install it recently, so I don't know. Like these installation steps may have changed to a certain degree, right? Anyway, you need to have Java on your computer, and then you can download the latest version of Ghidra from GitHub, right? And unzip it, and then take the executable code file, give it executable permission, and then just run it. Just give me a second. Okay. Yeah, so you just follow whatever the installation procedure, whatever the latest installation procedure, and once you get Ghidra, you can run it, right? It's Java basically. So this is how you would use Ghidra. Like this is a simple example that you can try out, right? You can write a simple C program like this, right? You can see this simple C program simply prints "Hello World" uh, uh, on the terminal, right? You write this simple C program, save it as hello.c, right? And you can compile it. You can use GCC compiler and compile it. So GCC will convert this thing into an executable file, and the default name is a.out usually, right? This executable file .a.out can be run by typing /a.out on the terminal, right? So this a.out, when you run it, it should print "Hello World" on the screen, right? Now we can use Ghidra, the reverse engineering tool, to get the source code back, right? So what you would do is on Ghidra, um, it has something called a symbol tree, and you go to functions options, and there you have main, right? uh, uh, you are going to see the decompiled code, right? Go through these options, and then you are going to see the decompiled options. You can see it here. Uh, um, uh, um, this A.out program was loaded, opened using Ghidra, right? And the decompiled code would look like this. You can see void main puts "Hello World," return, right? So something that you may quickly notice is that the original program we wrote had printf statement, right? It is inside the main method, main function. You have printf function, and you write "Hello World" there, right? But once you compile it and then use Ghidra to decompile and get the C code back, it has used put s function, but still with the "Hello World" string in the decompiled code, right? Still C, right? So this is interesting. So what it shows is that um, uh, 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 so you never get, not never, I mean you can, but like there's no guarantee that you are going to get the exact same code that the programmer, malware developer, or whoever the writer of the program wrote. You're not going to get that exact same code when you reverse engineer it, right? I mean, you don't get the same functions, the same thing, right? But the reverse engineered code gives you the capability to understand what this program is doing, right? So when you reverse engineer this, you can see that okay, this program is basically printing hello world on the screen, right? That's good enough, right? You can understand that. So same goes for any complex like logic, like if you are decompiling a malware, although the original malware developer may have written it in a particular way, right? When you decompile it, you get the code, you still get the algorithm or the general structure of the program. So you can understand what the malware is doing, right, by reading the decompiled code. But the code is not exactly same as what the malware developer wrote, right? I hope that's clear, but yeah. Yeah. So one thing you can try out with Gidra is find some real world malware code, right? And reverse engineer it with Gidra and have a look, right? For example, there's this thing called WannaCry ransomware. Nowadays, I don't think it's very dominant thing. Its time is over. But some years back, this WannaCry ransomware was like making headlines, right? I mean, it got installed on Windows computers, and then encrypt the content, and then like shows a message on the screen, and uh, basically like demand a ransom payment in order to decrypt the content, right? However, this WannaCry ransomware has been studied, and it's executable for content, like has been reverse engineered with Gidra to study what it does, right? So there's this nice Medium article. I didn't click it any recently to see if this link works. I believe it does. This article, this Medium article, very nicely described uh, how you can study a WannaCry malware using Git, right? So in GitHub, you can find the code of the WannaCry malware, and then download it and load it using Gidra, and see how like but you can see the WannaCry malware has been like its kill switch, or the how to disable WannaCry malware was found by analyzing its code by reverse engineering it, right? So that indicates that I mean software reverse engineering is really being used to inspect malware. uh, okay, so with that, we are reaching the end. So this is not a big topic, malware forensics, right? It's mostly security, right? But it has some forensic relevance, right? You are inspecting a computer, looking at malware on that computer or in the network, with a forensic interest, right? Yeah, a forensic interest, like you want to know what this malware is doing, who installed it here, like or who developed this malware, like for what purpose, what is their objective, like all these things has forensic relevance, right? But mostly it like tilt towards computer security direction, right? All right, okay, so with that we are ending our discussion on malware forensics as well, right? There was one last topic actually in my list. What I thought was that if we had time, we will cover that. But now it looks like we like since I like we lost several weeks, and now there's no much time to do that. There's this one topic called anti-forensics, right? So this is something I wanted to do, but we won't be able to do it. So that's about how you can uh, uh, prevent forensic analysis. So what kind of things a criminal or a bad guy would do, what kind of things they can do to avoid their device being analyzed using forensic techniques, and evidence being revealed from their devices, right? But we are not being able to do that. But I want one more week at least, one session somewhere, maybe an online session or somewhere, um, uh, which uh, which we can use to discuss the exam paper, the structure of it, and what to expect, etc. Uh, um, yeah, so I don't know when that would be. I will see. I will talk to the coordinator and see the possibility. I don't know. Even in this Saturday, if you don't have anything in the evening, then I can find some time to do that. But I don't know whether it's possible. We'll see. We'll see. Um, but in terms of content, this is it. I think we can't cover much anything more than that. Now what is remaining is preparing for the examination, right? So we'll find another time slot and talk about the exam paper somehow, right? We'll see. So you did the practical, I mean the in-class assignment, and I'm not really sure whether you got marks. I need to check. I believe that the marks has been posted. Probably just check. If not, like you are supposed to get marks by now. Have you seen your marks in the VLE? Can someone confirm that you have seen your marks? Yes, right. Okay. Okay. So the assignment marks are out there, so all good. So if anyone has any issues about it, like someone like if you have been absent, then you may have had done the take-home assignment. In that case, I'm not really sure whether we finished marking all the take-home assignment submissions. Like anyway, if you have any issues about it, just contact me. Like just drop me an email about it and resolve it before you go for the exam, because it's like after the exam like we'll be done processing marks of the assignments and it will be too late to do something. So if you have any issues with your marks on assignments in class or take home, just let me know as well, right? Okay, so with that we'll wind up. We'll catch up at another day. I'm not sure when, to talk about the exam paper, right? Yeah, all right. So and then all the best for the exam. We are going to meet again, hopefully. But anyway, prepare well. And yeah, uh, and stay safe. Again, the weather is going bad again, it seems, the coming few days. So, yeah, hope everybody will be safe. Okay, good night and see you again.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Yes. Good night.